My mother's voice crackled across the phone, a mix of begging and that recognizable guilt-tripping tone I had come to know. She needs a fresh start. Emma, you have to understand. As I tried to take in what she had just told me, I stood in my Manhattan office and gazed out at the skyline. It seems that without even asking me, my parents had let my sister Jessica to reside in my investment home for free. And you didn't consider asking me before. My hand grabbed the phone tighter, but I spoke steadily. Mom, it belongs to me. I paid for it out of pocket. Yes, but Jessica is going through a really tough period following her divorce. You're succeeding in your financial profession in New York, and she has nowhere else to go. The property isn't even used by you. I discreetly counted to 10 while closing my eyes. I was 32 years old, had saved every dime to invest in real estate, and had worked hard to establish a profession as an investment banker. My first significant investment property was a Chicago townhouse that my sister had reportedly moved into. I had meticulously restored it and was getting ready to rent it out at market value. In addition, my mother said, she has family. Families support one another. I understood the irony of such remarks. When Jessica drank her way through her trust fund, and I was working 3 jobs and suffering through college, where was this family-first mentality? What is the duration of her residence there? I feared the response as I asked. Oh, only a few of days. Last weekend she moved in. The spare key that was kept with us in case of emergencies was given to her by your father. He did, of course. My jobless sister is now permanently installed in my investment property with the emergency key I trusted them with. And just when did you want to inform me? Well, honey, we're informing you now. Jessica is ecstatic there too. She has previously mentioned repainting a few rooms to make them more luminous. I felt sick to my stomach. What did she? Oh, nothing significant. Only a few accent walls. You are aware of her talent for interior design. Design? Do you recall her desire to work as a decorator at one point? I did recall. Similar to her phases as a photographer, yoga instructor, and organic juice store owner. All costly endeavors financed by our parents that ultimately failed. She can't just, says Mom. Please, Emma, my mother said. Is it not possible for you to assist your sister once? She's kin. I inhaled deeply once again, my mind already working out a strategy. You're correct, Mom. She's kin. Oh, my dear, I knew you would comprehend. You've always been the more reasonable person. I muttered as I accessed my financial information on my laptop. I must leave immediately. Meeting with a client. I hung up and leaned back in my chair with a slight smile on my face. My family was unaware that I had spent months getting ready for this kind of activity. I had observed Jessica's tendency to get back on her feet with family support ever since her divorce. I had witnessed how my parents' gaze shifted to my accomplishments, security, and possessions. Just in case, I unlocked the bottom desk drawer and took out a large packet of electronic documents I had written with my lawyer 6 months prior, titled Chicago Property. Legal notifications, property rules, and, above all, the documentation pertaining to the property's new classification as a corporate asset. The townhouse was no longer solely in my name, you see. My LLC now owned it, and there were stringent legal requirements for its usage and occupancy. According to corporate property regulations, any unapproved home might be deemed trespassing. This is how I would explicitly put it up to guard against family crisis. Jessica texted me on my phone, saying, "Thanks for letting me crash at your apartment. You are the most amazing big sister ever. By the way, is it okay with you if I redesign the kitchen cabinets? The ones we have now are so antiquated." I didn't answer. Rather, I grabbed my office phone and called my attorney. It's Emma Sarah. Do you recall the situation we anticipated with the Chicago property? It is taking place. Yes, just as we had anticipated. Could you begin the procedure? I put things in action by going over the documentation with Sarah for the next hour. Formal notices would be prepared, the corporate supervision procedures would be triggered, and the property management firm would be informed. How about your parents? Sarah inquired. When they realize what's happening, they won't be happy. I answered, they won't find out until it's too late. In addition, when they distributed my spare key without my consent, they forfeited any right to an opinion. I received an email from Jessica that made my computer ping. This one includes pictures of the furnishings she intended to purchase for her new home, most likely using our parents' credit card. What is the desired wait time before starting the process? Sarah inquired. I reflected on all the instances in which I had witnessed Jessica use our parents' kindness and how they had expected me to comprehend, make accommodations, and give in because family helps family. I made the decision to give it 6 months. Enough time for them to believe they'd escaped punishment. Enough time for Jessica to truly get settled. It will be long enough for everyone to forget who owns it. Then we let them know why. Even if you're family, you shouldn't take what isn't yours. For the following several weeks, I watched from a distance as Jessica posted updates about her new life on social media. She was there, sharing pictures of the antique chandelier she had put in the dining room without anyone's consent. Instagram stories on her new beginning and how the universe just delivers sometimes were shared. Every picture, post, and change I made to my property was meticulously recorded and preserved. Jessica took the initiative to fix up the house, and my parents were continually dancing around the topic when they phoned. Rent, utilities, and the fact that they had effectively handed away my property without my permission were never brought up by them. Jessica is doing so much better now, my mother said over the phone. Thanks to you, honey, she's truly discovering who she is. You're a wonderful sister. I added another set of unapproved remodeling images to my documentation file while making indeterminate noises. Material was piling up in the folder, material that would become crucial in precisely 5 months and 3 weeks. To help her build some credit after the divorce, my mother reluctantly added, she was wondering if you might consider putting the utilities in her name. And perhaps, well, she was considering buying a dog. I take it that dogs are welcome in the building? I took the moment to giggle quietly while muting my phone. Actually, Mom, I have to go for a run. Large gathering. We can discuss this later. My property management business confirmed in an email that evening that they had recorded every modification made to the property since Jessica's unlawful occupation started. Every change and infraction of the corporate property agreements is painstakingly documented and dated. Another text message from Jessica buzzed through my phone. Hey sis, quick question. If I want to earn a little additional money while looking for a job, is it okay if I list one of the available rooms on Airbnb? I checked my calendar and added the wording to my documentation file. 2 weeks and 5 months remain. The property was no longer the only factor in this. This was about setting limits, showing my family that I wasn't their personal safety net because of my success, and teaching them respect. Allowing family members to suffer the repercussions of their conduct is sometimes the most kind thing you can do for them. And there would be repercussions in fact in 5 months and 2 weeks. My property management business delivered me their final report 5 months into Jessica's new beginning. Everything was included in the document. Almost $23,000 in unapproved renovations, several building code infractions from her do-it-yourself upgrades, and, above all, proof of the illicit errand business she had been operating out of my extra rooms. I sat in my office going over the documents and pictures. My meticulously restored investment house was entirely transformed by Jessica into what she referred to as her bohemian dream space. The expensive appliances, the tasteful gray walls, were suddenly dotted with bright hues. According to her social media, the originals were sold online, and the lesser units that I had fitted had been replaced. Now, she described the meticulously preserved hardwood flooring as being covered in artistic epoxy designs. She texted me again, and my phone buzzed. You won't believe how gorgeous the house looks today, Emma. I'm considering launching a blog about house remodeling. Perhaps this will become my new profession. I checked the calendar and added the message to my documentation file. My planned corporate audit is in 2 weeks. It took my family 2 weeks to discover the consequences of mistaking compassion for weakness. Are you sure about this timing? During our last review meeting, Sarah inquired. Your sister's birthday party is the day after the audit notices go out. Recalling the invitation I had gotten, I grinned. Naturally, Jessica was organizing a massive housewarming party that doubled as a birthday celebration at my place. She had already engaged caterers and invited 50 people, all of which were paid for by our parents. The timing is perfect, I answered. Permit them to rejoice. It will increase the effect of the notifications. My mother phoned the day before the audit. You're attending Jessica's party tomorrow, aren't you, Emma? Everyone is eager to see what she has done with the house because she has worked so hard on it. Actually, Mom, tomorrow I'm in Chicago on business. I will visit. Oh, how lovely. Jessica will be overjoyed. She continues expressing that she wishes you were here more often so she could show you how she turned your former rental property into a genuine house. It seemed as though Jessica was seizing my previous investment property as a favor after I had abandoned it. By the way, my mother said, your father and I have been considering. Perhaps we could talk about giving Jessica the deed because she has done so much to make the house better. This would really aid her in establishing herself, since you're doing so well in New York. I tightened my hold on my phone. We can discuss everything tomorrow. I took a trip to Chicago that evening. Several copies of the company audit results, court notifications, and records of all unlawful changes and violations were in my briefcase. I also produced evidence of Jessica's internet revenue from renting out rooms in a house she didn't own, as well as police records from neighbors who had complained about her visitors. I got at the property early for the formal corporate inspection on the morning of Jessica's party. In addition to my lawyer and the property management team, a qualified contractor had already arrived to inspect the unauthorized alterations. The building code violations alone. Whistling, the contractor went over the modifications. The kitchen's electrical work isn't up to code. The epoxy flooring lacked adequate sealing, not to mention the load-bearing wall she took down to make room for it. After recording everything, I looked at my watch. The celebration is 3 hours away. My phone rang with a message from Jessica just as I expected it to. Where are you? I need assistance setting up now that the caterers have arrived. By the way, you won't believe what I did with your former home office. It's now a meditation space with a water feature. My lawyer put the note to our file when I emailed it to him. She said, the notices are ready. Would you like us to serve them during or after the party? My mother's casual proposal to transfer the deed crossed my mind. Regarding Jessica's rightful modifications to my property, I spent almost half a year seeing them exploit my achievements. During, I said. First, let them enjoy themselves. Allow them to fully display all of the work they have done on my property. We'll then reveal to them the true owner of this mansion. And it's no longer just me. At 4 o'clock, the visitors began to arrive. As a happy homeowner, I watched from my car as Jessica greeted everyone. As she offered tours, I could see my parents grinning through the windows, likely boasting about all her improvements. The celebration was in full flow when my property management staff showed up with the formal notifications at precisely 5:30. I adjusted my jacket, got out of my car, and headed for the house I had worked so hard to save for years. It's time to tell my family that sometimes the lessons you believed would be free end up costing the most. Emma. When I went in, Jessica shrieked and rushed to give me a hug. You've arrived at last. The home is wonderful, isn't it? I've accomplished a lot with it. I could see my parents' features brighten behind her. They hadn't observed the group of individuals who were following me in with paperwork and clipboards. Yes, I said subtly. Let's talk about exactly what you've done with my property. When my lawyer came forward with notices in hand, the room became silent. When Jessica finally saw the official-looking paperwork on her reproposed coffee table, her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips. Sometimes getting even isn't the greatest form of retaliation. It's about refusing to back down and allowing people to pay for their deeds. And I knew that this was only the beginning as I saw my family's faces light up with knowledge. The celebration was enveloped in a deafening hush. As Jessica lifted the top document from the stack, her immaculately manicured palm shook. Did we? What is this? Her gaze swept across the formal letterhead as she stuttered. This, Sarah, my attorney said, is a formal notice of unauthorized occupancy and property violations issued by EJM Holdings, LLC, the legal owner of this property. EJM Holdings. My father stepped up to interrupt. Emma, what's going on? Even when the partygoers began talking to one another, I remained calm. My company is called EJM Holdings, Dad. 6 months ago, around the time you handed Jessica my emergency key, the property was moved there. My mom's face became white. However, that is really a technicality, isn't it? You still own this house. No, Mother. Corporate norms and regulations apply to this property, and throughout the last 6 months, there have been several infractions of these policies. Jessica's boyfriend attempted to interrupt, claiming to be a real estate mogul whom she had met at a yoga retreat. Hey, hurry up. It's family matters. With all this business jargon, you can't be serious. Sarah took out another piece of paper. We're really serious about this. Unauthorized structural alterations, many building code infractions, and, most alarmingly, illegal subletting via Erin are all documented. The audience became more subdued. The glass of champagne that Jessica had been so proud of dropped out of her palm and shattered on the epoxy-covered floorboards. She objected. Those were just temporary guests. Friends staying over. Friends who paid $200 per night through your Erin listing. I pulled up screenshots on my phone and requested in a low voice. The one where you advertised this corporate property as your own? My dad took a step forward, his cheeks flushed. Now, Emma, pay attention. Your sister need assistance. We were simply. Just what, Dad? I interrupted him. Simply donating property that wasn't yours. Simply permitting unapproved changes that have jeopardized the structural soundness of the building. Ignoring the fact that Jessica operated an illicit rental business. The contractor who had previously examined the property came forward. Ma'am, would you like me to detail the code violations we found? Jessica started crying. This is unfair. I improved this location. Look at how lovely everything is right now. I took a look at her improvements, the sticky epoxy flooring, the amateur electrical work, and the removed load-bearing wall. Better? You've caused infractions and damage worth thousands of dollars, which must be fixed. Then my mother muttered, Thousands? Sarah gave a nod. The initial estimate for bringing the property back to code is approximately $45,000, and that's before we address the illegal rental income. My dad's face became purple instead of red. This is absurd. This cannot be done to your own sister. Actually, I'm not doing anything, but I can. These are only the results of what she did, which you made possible. The property manager came forward carrying further documents. We have records of every unlawful rental transaction, infraction, and unauthorized modification. Additionally, we have proof that the original appliances and fixtures were offered for sale online. Anger replaced the tears in Jessica's eyes. Those unsightly appliances, I swapped them out for better ones. Those ugly appliances were commercial grade and worth over $115,000, I said quietly. Appliances you had no right to sell. My mom took hold of my arm. Please, Emma, let's resolve this as a family. All this legal bullshit is unnecessary. I tip her hand away gently. Mom, you're mistaken there. The minute Jessica chose to treat my investment as her own remodeling project, and you and Dad opted to give away property that wasn't yours, this ceased to be a family concern. But I needed a fresh start, Jessica sobbed. After the divorce, I interrupted her, saying, Your fresh start doesn't entitle you to my property. Your divorce doesn't give you the right to make unauthorized changes, sell things that aren't yours, or run an illegal rental business. Plates of unfinished food and half-empty drinks were left behind as the partygoers silently filed out. The majority of Jessica's alleged pals had vanished, as had her boyfriend. Sarah cleared her throat. Our records show that Miss Jessica Harrison has illegally rented out company property for brief periods of time, earning about $22,000. It will be necessary to repay this revenue as well as the money received from the sale of company assets. Jessica flopped down on her retro-style couch. That type of money is not mine. I used it to make this site better. Improving. I chuckled quietly. You mean harming? Every modification you made without authorization, structural change you made without permits, and building code infraction you committed are all recorded, and they must all be corrected. My dad made one final attempt. Be sensible, Emma. What are your expectations for your sister? What is her intended destination? I slowly looked into his eyes. Just as it wasn't your property to give away, that's not my problem, Dad. Jessica has precisely 30 days to leave the property and start paying back the damages and unlawful rental money. 30 days? My mom let out a gasp. However, all she has is here. Here, she has established a life. Sarah interrupted, saying, she built a life on stolen property. It is a kindness to give 30 days. We might demand an immediate evacuation given the severity of the offenses. Jessica sprang to her feet. This is impossible. Tell her she can't do this, Mom and Dad. I eventually realized my parents had no authority here as I watched them exchange pathetic looks. Everything was falling apart because of their blatant disrespect for my property rights and their arrogant belief that Jessica's needs came before mine. Calmly, I said, the property will be restored to its original condition. Jessica, you will be liable for any expenses not paid for by the return of the illicit rental money. Indeed, if required, we will take legal action. Then my mother muttered, legal action? You'd sue your own sister. Like how you tried to manipulate me into transferring the deed to her? I inquired. Yes, Mom, I did hear your prior idea. Take this as my answer. Final copies of the notifications were distributed by the property management. Our legal department should now be the source of any correspondence pertaining to this issue. Legal action will be taken right away against any efforts to continue renting the property without permission or make any modifications. I started to walk away, then stopped. Oh, and happy birthday, Jessica. Think of this as a wake-up call. Lessons we never wanted to learn can sometimes be the greatest gifts. I heard my father's irate mumbling, my mother's entreaties, and Jessica's weeping as I left my house. But I felt calm for the first time in months. Standing your position might also entail playing the villain in someone else's tale. However, I would much rather be the antagonist than the doormat they attempted to make me. Let them accuse me of being unkind. Allow them to portray me as the cold-hearted corporate sister who refused to assist family. I was aware of the reality. Allowing family members to suffer the repercussions of their conduct is sometimes the most kind thing you can do for them. I was looking around my beautifully renovated Chicago property 6 months after Jessica's tragic birthday celebration. New commercial-grade equipment shone in the kitchen, the load-bearing wall had been correctly rebuilt, and the walls had returned to their previous exquisite gray color. Every code infraction had been fixed, every repair had been recorded, and every evidence of Jessica's improvements had been removed. After contractors discovered the entire amount of the damage, the restoration cost came to $67,000, which was much more than the original estimate. Following protracted discussions with our attorneys, Jessica had consented to a payback arrangement that would pay for the damages and unlawful rental revenue with a portion of our grandparents' estate. She texted me, the first direct message we exchanged in months, and my phone rang. Can we have a face-to-face conversation? No drama, no attorneys, only sisters. Something had changed in me during the last 2 months, but I still thought about ignoring it. Coffee at 10 o'clock tomorrow. The store across the street from my house. The following morning, I nearly didn't recognize my sister when I got to the coffee shop. The bohemian attire and easygoing demeanor were vanished. Rather, Jessica appeared professional as she sat with a laptop open in front of her while wearing business casual clothing. She replied softly, "Thanks for meeting me," as I took a seat. "I've been doing a lot of thinking." "Oh," I noted the spreadsheets on her screen while maintaining a neutral tone. "You were right," she said, which surprised me. "Almost everything. I exploited it. I thought I had some claim to your things since you were my sister and you were successful. What you constructed was not respected by me." I waited while sipping my coffee. "The last few months have been instructive," she went on. "Living with mom and dad again, actually having to budget, facing real consequences." She chuckled quietly. "Turns out I'm not as helpless as everyone thought." She swiveled her laptop in my direction. A business plan for a reputable home staging firm was displayed on the screen. "Do you recall my previous discussions regarding interior design? This time, though, I'm doing it right, taking classes, earning my certification, and creating a legitimate business plan. No giveaways or quick cuts. And the funding." With real curiosity, I inquired. "I'm starting off small, developing a portfolio, and applying my existing talents. I'll apply for a legitimate business loan when I've established my worth. Stop depending on family funds, or," she paused, "or taking what isn't mine." I really saw my sister for the first time in years. The person she might be when she really tried, not the conceited lady who had occupied my land. She confessed, "Mom and Dad aren't happy. They intended for me to oppose the repayment arrangement in order to coerce you into giving in. However, I wouldn't. Emma, I needed this wake-up call. All of us did." She took the check out. "The first installment is this one. I wanted to give you one in person to show you that I mean it, even though I know it's technically going through the attorneys." I glanced at my sister and then at the check. I said, "Keep it, at last. Put it toward your certification courses instead." Her gaze expanded. I explained, "But the repayment plan still stands. However, think of this one payment as an investment in your future. This time, a real one." Her eyes filled with tears, but they weren't the deceptive ones I was accustomed to seeing. "I apologize so much, Emma. For everything. I am aware." Before she talked again, we sat in cozy silence for a while. "To assist with the repairs, Dad is selling his boat. He said that because he handed away your key, this is the least he can do. And Mom. In fact, Mom is discussing her enabling behaviors with a therapist." I arched an eyebrow. This was not what was expecting. "Your actions didn't just wake me up," Jessica clarified. "They made all of us look at our patterns, how we took advantage, how we justified it because of family ties." As she prepared to depart for her certification class, she grabbed her belongings. "I'm not pleading for pardon just yet. I am aware that I must earn that. However, I want you to know that you made the correct decision. You did something none of us had the guts to do, even if it felt harsh at the time. The cycle was broken by you." I walked back to my property after she departed. Everything that had been repaired was highlighted by the afternoon sun that came through the windows. However, I recognized that perhaps the property was not the only thing that had been corrected. My father sent me an email that evening. The message was, "Apologies and amends. To Emma," it started. "I need to do this right. So I'm selling my boat and a few other possessions. Not because Jessica asked me to. I abused your confidence by giving away your key. And then I had the gall to claim that I was defending it. Your father need to treat you better." I noted how unusual it seemed from his typical defensive reactions and preserved the email. It seems that forcing people to deal with the repercussions of their conduct may bring about change. My property manager emailed the final renovation images the following day. I came to a startling realization as I looked at them. It had been more than just safeguarding my investment. It had included setting limits, requesting deference, and making the difficult decision to put justice ahead of short-term harmony. Once more, the property was mine, truly mine. More significantly, though, my family was beginning to value not only my property but also my autonomy. Growing up may sometimes be the greatest gift you can offer your family, even if it comes with legal notifications and difficult lessons. And sometimes the finest foundations are based on earned respect and strict boundaries rather than on unending generosity. I grinned as I stood on my renovated property. The walls were strengthened rather than merely mended. I was too. Emma Miller, 35, was standing by the window, leaning on the contemporary fence, looking at the fall color in her garden as twilight began to creep over the affluent Lake Forest suburb of Chicago. Emma, who was 5 months pregnant, stroked her slightly protruding tummy. She briefly forgot the complex connections with her sister and dad as she experienced a calm joy with each revelation of the small life within. Emma felt memories flood her mind as she closed her eyes. She remembered the incident from 2 years ago at her father's birthday celebration. Her father, Howard's 60th birthday, was marked with a lavish party at the Baker family's opulent home. Champagne flowed freely, and the titans of Chicago's real estate sector were invited. "Oh, Emma," said Michelle, her mother, who was wearing a gaudy Chanel outfit. "Did you buy that dress on sale at a department store?" It was obvious that it was sarcastic. Although Emma's plain black clothing was purchased from a department shop, it also embodied her moral principles. Calmly, "Yes, I like it," she said. Michelle said, "Well, with your husband's salary, that's understandable," raising her voice to be heard by the other guests. "A small real estate firm's president is nothing compared to the people here." Her sister Charlotte, who was wearing a Hermes dress and a necklace that was obviously real diamonds, interrupted at that point. Charlotte said, "Emma, it's rare to see you here," in a mocking tone. "Usually you avoid family gatherings, preferring a simple life." Emma only gave a quiet smile. At their father's business, Charlotte was the director of sales, but her abilities were in doubt. Her parents, however, gave her a large salary and permitted her to live a luxurious lifestyle. Emma heard her father talking to a customer during the celebration. Howard claimed, "Charlotte is the key to the future of Baker real estate. She's showing excellent skills as my successor." Emma couldn't resist grinning. She was aware that Charlotte's abilities were limited to pretentious showmanship and meaningless small talk. "Father," said Emma, and Howard's face tensed for a second. He forced a polite grin. "Ah, Emma," he said, "you came today." Her words were, "Happy birthday." "Ah," said Howard abruptly. "Is John working today?" "Yes, he's got an important case." In a mocking tone, Howard remarked, "Well, being the president of a small company must be tough." "Well, the scale is just different from big corporations like ours." "Emma," Michelle began abruptly as the evening came to a conclusion, "I have to tell you something." Beneath the heavy makeup, her face looked serious. "The decision has been made for Charlotte to inherit Howard's business. Since you broke with our family's custom and went it alone, you have no voice." Although Emma sensed a sinister undertone to those comments, she chose not to follow it. Then, a few weeks ago, Emma went to see her parents to tell them she was pregnant for the first time since that celebration 2 years earlier. However, the day's events left severe wounds. "Pregnant?" Michelle seems taken aback. "Really? It will be difficult to raise children given your living conditions." "We're preparing well," Emma insisted. "Preparing?" Charlotte added her voice. "You must think of preparedness as just another straightforward way of living. That youngster is a sad case." Emma bore it in silence, but the ultimate blow came from her father's parting words. "Emma," cautioned Howard, "don't give your kid the Baker last name. I won't allow you to ruin the customs of our family." Emma had avoided her family as much as possible since that day. She didn't respond to emails or phone calls. She made the decision to defend herself and her unborn child, not only to show disobedience. Even yet, she continued to feel the weight of her family's shadow, particularly when she heard gossip about the business that her parents and Charlotte owned. She experienced an unfathomable sense of worry. The business seemed to be doing well on the surface. Strange whispers about unusual transactions and opaque cash flows, meanwhile, continued to circulate inside the business. Emma had a feeling that a big fact was being withheld, but she was unaware that these whispers were only the beginning. Michelle said, "We were embarrassed at the wedding too. echoing. Such a modest wedding, it completely ruined the Baker family's reputation. Emma's eyes opened, the fall breeze strewn with memories of the past. Are you feeling okay? Behind her, Jason's soft voice could be heard. As the CEO of a real estate development business, he had just concluded another hectic day. Even though he was under continual strain, he always made sure to check on Emma's health first when he got home. Emma smiled and said, "Yes, perfect," as she turned around in her plain dress devoid of any opulent trimmings. Her extravagant family's way of life was a sharp contrast to her own. The silence was broken when her smartphone called at home. As Mom appeared on the screen, Emma's face tensed. She inhaled deeply and picked up the phone after 3 rings. "Hello," Michelle said. "Emma, I need to talk to you about your baby shower," in her typically haughty tone. The background noise implied that she was getting a massage in a posh spa. "I have planned a party at Lisandro for next Saturday at 7:30. Be present." One of Chicago's most prominent French eateries, Lisandro is renowned for its exquisite service and hundreds-dollar delicacies. Unconsciously, Emma scowled. This was always the case with her family, preoccupied with outward appearances and opinions. "Mom, it doesn't have to be somewhere that fancy." "Nonsense," Michelle said, her tone hardening. "My first grandchild is this one. It need to be honored in a suitable setting. Or are you going to continue being humble as usual?" Her remarks conveyed years of disapproval of Emma's choices, contempt for her marriage to Jason, and condemnation of her way of life. As soon as I hung up, Charlotte sent me a message on Messenger. "Please come this time, Emma. You always avoid us, which is unfortunate. Your parents are quite concerned about you." Emma grinned bitterly as she gazed at the screen of her smartphone. Charlotte's hypocritical remarks, which denigrated Emma's choice to be independent, were always concealed by malice. Jason touched her shoulder in silence. "If you don't want to, you are under no obligation to go. You don't have to hear them." Emma answered, "Yes, I'll go," with firmness. "I'm done," said Emma. "Are you fleeing? Perhaps it's time to relax." Emma was in the study that evening, looking through an old book that had pictures from 10 years prior, when she made the decision to quit a large company and become self-sufficient. Charlotte decided to remain with the family despite her parents making fun of her choice. "There is nothing you can do," her mother had said. "You'll just be a disgrace to our family." And she could still hear the words. The young Emma in the pictures appeared nervous, but she persisted. She met Jason Miller as a result of that choice, which brought her the most joy of her life. Even though he was just the president of a tiny real estate firm at the time, Emma was immediately drawn to his honesty, his unwavering work ethic, and, above all, his belief that individuals should be judged on their character rather than their rank or looks. The marriage was disapproved of both Charlotte and her parents. "What's the point of marrying someone from such a small real estate company?" Charlotte laughed. Emma, however, was content. Jason was now the CEO of a large real estate development company after growing his business consistently. The pair nevertheless kept up their humble lifestyle. They cherished true enjoyment, unaffected by vanity or pretension. "Emma," Jason said, peeking via the study door, "will you please come here? I need to talk about something." The tone of his speech was one of resolve. Unaware that what was about to happen would drastically change her life, Emma closed the old album and got to her feet softly. An ancient structure that exuded grandeur, Londor loomed magnificently in a nook of Chicago's Gold Coast. In the darkness of the night, its Art Deco facade, which was evocative of the golden period of the 1920s, glistened fancifully. Emma sighed deeply as she got out of the vehicle. She looked stunning in a blue maternity dress and fit well in with the restaurant's decor. The time on the clock was 7:25. "Take care," urged the cabbie. "It seems like a place you might not prefer." At his remarks, Emma gave a little smile. She did not share her ideals with such an opulent restaurant, but maybe it was time to make amends with her family tonight. Gentle light from the chandeliers created lovely shadows on the marble floor as she opened the hefty brass door. The floor manager, Gabriel, came over grinning elegantly. "Are you part of the Baker family's party?" "Yes, that's us," said Emma. "I'm sorry, but your party has already finished their meal." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Already. However, the appointment was set for 7:30. Gabriel's face became hazy. "No, your reservation was for 6. Everything became evident at that same moment. It was a setup. In order to keep her cool, Emma inhaled deeply. "I'll show you to your table." She entered the main dining area and noticed the wine bottles and empty plates haphazardly placed on the table. Michelle, her mother, had a flimsy grin while wearing a Channel tweed jacket. Her sister Charlotte grinned with her smartphone in hand, while her father Howard sat uneasily in his chair. Michelle said, "Oh, Emma, you finally arrived," with a hint of surprise in her voice. "Our meal is already complete. We didn't anticipate your tardiness." "Mom," Emma said coldly, "the reservation was supposed to be at 7:30. "Impossible?" Charlotte cried out. "It was 6 o'clock. I ensured it." Taking out her phone, Emma read a message from Michelle. It was rather explicit in the text. "Please come at 7:30. Michelle changed the subject and said, "By the way, about the bill. We reserved this to celebrate your baby shower, but you were late, so we had to eat." "So, you expect me to pay?" Emma interrupted her. "Exactly," stated Charlotte. "Since you were late." Emma took a quick look at the table's bill, which included 2 bottles of pricey wine, 4-course meals, and extra desserts. The sum was more than $2,000. At that moment, soft footsteps came from the restaurant doorway. The words, "Sorry to keep you waiting," were heard from Jason. He walked dignifiedly up to the table in his blue suit. Michelle's voice softened abruptly. "Oh, Jason," she said. "Glad you could join us." But Chef Lou Martin, the proprietor of the restaurant, came after Jason. Michelle's face froze as he emerged. Lou said, "Mrs. Baker," in a serious tone, "thank you for visiting the flagship restaurant of Miller Hospitality Group today." "Miller Hospitality Group." Charlotte's tone faltered. "Yes," Jason said coolly. "I own the business. Limas on Door is one of the 5 elite eateries in Chicago that I oversee." When the 3 people at the table discovered that the head of the modest real estate company they had despised was actually the owner of a chain of upscale restaurants, their faces went white. Jason went on, "All records of today's reservation and surveillance footage are kept as evidence of intentional time tampering and fraudulent billing." Michelle's hands were shaking as she reached for her purse. Charlotte nearly dropped her phone when Howard's face became white. Howard began to explain, "This is just a misunderstanding," in a frantic attempt. It's not a misunderstanding, Father." Jason's eyes were keen, but his speech was quiet. "This scam is deliberate, and this is only the beginning. We are also looking at your previous behavior in great detail." Emma saw her family's faces fall apart as she stood by her spouse. Years of dishonesty and conceit were finally ending. The skyline of Chicago was glaring ruthlessly beyond the window. The private dining room had a somber tone. The faces around the table were brutally lit by the light from the chandelier. Jason placed a briefcase made of black leather on the table in silence. "There's something I want you to see." The sound of the lock snapping was abnormally loud. Michelle's heavily makeup-covered face twisted. Charlotte was transfixed, still holding her phone, while Howard used his old hands to wipe perspiration from his brow. Jason produced a paper and said, "This is Baker Real Estate's transaction records for the past 5 years." Jason went on, "Very interesting content, Father." What are you talking about?" Howard trembled when he spoke. "False transactions, fake invoicing." Jason displayed an additional document. "Multiple illegal loans." Emma let out a gasp. She was unaware of the extent of the corruption in her father's business. It's been almost insolvent since the 2008 real estate crisis. But you kept up appearances and had an extravagant lifestyle. All of the money was obtained illegally. Be quiet, Michelle yelled abruptly. What are you aware of? We have a social position to uphold and defend. Therefore, we had to. Are you saying that fraud was necessary? Emma interrupted. Is that why you've looked down on me all these years? You. Charlotte got to her feet. A humble lifestyle? Our family is ashamed of you. Nothing is clear to you. Emma's tone didn't waver. Jason also. Jason produced an additional document. Charlotte Baker, here are the findings of an investigation into your divorce and current financial situation. Charlotte's expression became white. It's been 6 months since your divorce. Your father's company's sales director title was a fiction. Emma persisted unrelentingly. There are no real sales. You just steal from your parents and collect a wage. Stop. Charlotte started crying. I was in a bad situation. I had nothing after the divorce, but I didn't want anybody to know, least of all you, who seemed to lead such a wonderful life. Perfect. Emma laughed. I've just been living honestly. Enough is enough. Michelle spoke out once again. Emma, we have been defending our family's pride. Pride would be incomprehensible to you. Jason shot back icily. Look at this. Michelle's personal bank account activities were the new document that was shown. Mrs. Baker, you have been using funds embezzled from your husband's company to attend several high-end spas and beauty clinics, and you've been adding on to all these expenses. Be quiet. Michelle put her hands over her ears. A newcomer like you has no right to criticize our way of life. A newbie. At least I didn't use any illegal methods to build my company. Additionally, the reason you. Emma said, you looked down on me and got to her feet. It was only jealousy, because I was the only one who succeeded. Because unlike you, I didn't become enmeshed in vanity and pretense. Emma Howard's voice trembled as she spoke. We were thinking of your best interest. Lies, Emma's repeated voice said. Your pride has been your life's work. You never showed me or this child any true concern. She stroked her stomach tenderly. She was adamant that her child not be exposed to their world of lies. What do you intend to do now? Jason asked in a low voice. We can submit all this evidence to the authorities. Howard's face became white. No, not that. Charlotte broke down in tears. Please don't. We are unable to descend anymore. Fall, Emma stated icily. For a long time, you have been falling. You just choose not to notice it. The paperwork on the table were ruthlessly lit by the chandelier light. The weight of years of dishonesty and deceit was evident in the mountain of evidence. The words, you have 24 hours, said Jason. Make a decision on this matter. We will file a lawsuit if we don't receive a response before then. Michelle's daughter was contacted. Emma, surely you wouldn't turn against your own family. As of today, we are no longer related. It's over. Goodbye. The 3 Baker family members stared blankly when Emma and Jason exited the room. The private room of the fancy restaurant was empty save for the remains of a broken family. The Chicago skyline was still shining brilliantly outside, but they could no longer feel its warmth. A beam of sunlight filled the quiet courtroom. Jason was seated next to Emma, who was 6 months pregnant, in the spectator area. The prosecutor's voice resonated throughout the anxious courtroom. Now, Howard Baker, Michelle Baker, and Charlotte Baker will go on trial for fraud, forgery, and embezzlement. The Baker family had not contacted them within the 24-hour grace period. Rather, they attempted to erase the evidence, but this just made matters worse for them. Regarding systemic fraudulent transactions at Baker Real Estate, the prosecution said, the defendants conducted fraudulent transactions exceeding $5 million since 2008. Emma glanced behind the 3 people seated at the dock. They had lost their glitzy look. Charlotte grabbed a handkerchief with shaking hands. Her mother's face was downturned and makeup-free, and her father seemed tired. One piece of evidence after another was produced, including documentation of illicit financing, proof of financial statement manipulation, and the restaurant's planned deception. In addition, defendant Michelle Baker embezzled more than $1 million for the business. They whispered in the courtroom. Michelle put her hands over her face. Defendant Charlotte Baker reported fictitious sales figures, received undue salaries, and fraudulently obtained benefits and economic gains through false declarations during her divorce. Charlotte's shoulders trembled a bit. The counterarguments from the defense seemed vacuous. The defendants made unavoidable choices to maintain their social status. Objection, said the prosecutor. Maintaining social status does not justify committing crimes. The judge pronounced, objection sustained, with firmness. From the event at the restaurant to the findings of a protracted inquiry, Jason's testimony as a witness was pivotal. He detailed the whole scope of the scam in great detail. Although Baker Real Estate gave the impression of being a prosperous business, it was actually totally bankrupt. To hide this truth, the defendants committed a number of illegal acts. Emma vowed in her heart that this was not about retaliation as she heard Jason's story. Justice was at issue. The necessary steps to stop years of deceit and falsehoods. The following verdicts were handed out during the afternoon court session. Howard Baker, the defendant, faces 5 years in jail. Michelle Baker, the defendant, faces 3 years in jail. Charlotte Baker, the defendant, was sentenced to 2 years in jail with 4 years suspended. They were also mandated to pay hefty fines and refund the illicit riches. All assets were frozen, the mansion was seized, and Baker Real Estate was dissolved. Michelle was upset at the judgment. Are you truly going to put your own mother in jail, Emma? Remember, you mistreated your own daughter emotionally. Are you content to destroy our lives? Charlotte yelled. Jason calmly said, it was your own actions that ruined your lives. As Emma walked out of the courtroom, she didn't turn around. The stairs of the courthouse were drenched in spring sunlight. Are you okay? Jason asked softly. Yes. Our child may now grow up in a world free from dishonesty and deception. The streets of Chicago were busy as usual, but Emma was experiencing a major shift. This was a fresh start rather than the finish. 3 years later, Emma was watching her 2-year-old daughter, Ashley, play in the garden from the window in the quiet Lake Forest neighborhood. 3 years before, the landscape with the swirling leaves and the autumn dusk was the same, but now everything was different. Mommy, look. Ashley displayed a sketch. I drew flowers. Emma said, that's lovely, with a smile. Jason emerged from the research. About your mother, Emma. The Illinois State Prison has freed Michelle Baker. A friend said the once elegant form had become a weary old lady. With the majority of her assets stolen and no chance of reintegration into society, her post-release existence appeared dismal. Does it bother you? Jason asked softly. No. Pulling a letter out of a drawer, Emma said, I just feel like it's karma. A week ago, I received a letter from Charlotte. Living a humble existence in a small town, Charlotte was given a suspended sentence. Emma had no intention of answering the letter, which included apologies and a request for reconciliation. Jason said, hey, and gave her a back hug. What are you thinking about? That our decision was the right one. We chose genuine happiness and severed ties based on deception. Even though the Miller Hospitality Group had expanded during the previous 3 years, they continued to lead a modest life. There was no need for pretension or luxury. The depths of true delight were far greater. Any regrets? From behind, Jason inquired. Not one. Our current contentment is the result of our decision to live an honest life. Emma thought about a tale she had heard about a jail guard from a friend, once referred to as the king of Chicago real estate. Howard Baker initially remained haughty while incarcerated. But when confronted with the fact that he was not given preferential treatment, he began to lose his mind and began repeating in his cell every night, I am a big shot. Are you unaware of who I am? The other prisoners started making fun of him. Emma's current happiness was built on a different route, one of honesty and integrity. whereas the family who chose to live in deception and deceit suffered the consequence. Emma felt deeply satisfied and full of optimism for the future.